Crypto Caesar Capital. Hope you're well. It's the 3rd of October, 2025, and we're going to look at Bitcoin as usual. We're going to look at the altcoin market as well. But we are now officially in quarter four of 2025. And as you all well know, if you watch my videos, we know that quarter four is the best performing financial quarter for Bitcoin 100% of the time. So it's not surprising that Bitcoin is up already, just 3 days into October. And my view is this will likely continue through this financial quarter. So let's have a look at some different things in relation to Bitcoin, some different indicators which suggest to me that volatility is on the horizon. The first thing we're going to look at is the Wasabi Bitcoin volatility. And that's this indicator down here. And as you can see, if I maximize it, you can see that right now we are at historical lows of volatility for Bitcoin. That's not surprising given that essentially as Bitcoin matures as an asset, it will become less volatile once Bitcoin starts trading at, say, $1 million in the future per Bitcoin. The volatility will be significantly dampened. But still, what's quite clear with volatility in relation to Bitcoin is that when volatility slows down for a period of time and goes super low, then things get squeezed and there's volatility. And the volatility is usually to the upside. And what I've mapped out here using the indicator, the Bitcoin volatility indicator, which is in orange, is I've mapped out here where we are now, where the volatility is now, and it's at sort of 85. And what happens when Bitcoin gets down in this area of volatility of sort of 100 down to 85, 81 sort of area. So back in January 23, Bitcoin's volatility indicator came right down to the lowest it had ever been at that point. And then what happened? There was a huge breakout to the upside. I'm not suggesting that we're going to have this sort of move next. It would be nice. It might happen, but I very much doubt there's going to be that much volatility. I mean, there could be if the US decides that they are going to start buying Bitcoin and holding it as a treasury asset, holding it in their coffers, in the government coffers, and that they were going to buy, say, 1 million Bitcoin or something. But I don't really think we're going to get that news in this financial quarter. But either way, the point is, when Bitcoin volatility came down and it dampened, there was a huge move in volatility to the upside, and that caused this big run to the upside in 2017. Of course, Bitcoin was trading at that point around about $800, and it went from $800 all the way close to $20,000. But the next significant area, really, or move in volatility when it came down to about 114, was back in November 20, where Bitcoin had this significant move, breaching its previous all-time high in around about December, and then pushing forward up into March for what some people might have called the top at that point, but obviously it came back down and made a 4-year cycle top. Point though being, volatility was low, everything got squeezed, and the price pushed to the upside. The next significant area of volatility movement was on the 9th of October 23, when Bitcoin volatility came down to about 90, and then it had this sort of big move from about 29K up to about 44K or so. So quite a significant move there as well. And then we had Bitcoin volatility come down in January 24 to 93, and that caused a really quite violent move to the upside from 40K all the way up to about 75K or so. So again, point being, Bitcoin volatility dampens and comes down to historical lows, what happens? Everything gets squeezed, price pushes higher. And right now, we are at an historical low of about 83, which is, unheard of. We've never had volatility that low. So my view is that there is going to be a real push now to the upside through Q4, and that is happening as we speak because we're at 120,000. We were, literally at about 100, 104, 105, 106 not long ago. So, volatility is coming. It's starting to squeeze. It's starting to push. The next indicator I want to show you is the Bollinger Bands. I tweeted about this some time ago. This is Bitcoin on the monthly chart now. Previous chart I was showing you was on a weekly chart, but this is on a monthly chart. And we can see this indicator below is the Bollinger Band width. So it measures the width of the Bollinger Band. And when you get a super tight Bollinger Band, volatility is definitely on the horizon. Usually to the upside with Bitcoin, can be to the downside. But here again, I've mapped them out. So the Bollinger Bands got super, super tight here back in April of 2016, historically tight. What happened? There was this long then push to the upside. That was quite early on though in the cycle. To be honest, only, the low had only come in August 2015. So there was a long way in the cycle to go at that point. But again, Bollinger Bands squeezed, width got really, really tight, moved to the upside. Again, this is a good example. 1st of October 2020, the Bollinger Bands got to a historical low at that point, or they squeezed tight to a historical tightness. And that caused a massive push to the upside, which lasted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 months. And again, here in November 23, the bands were historically tight again, and that caused a move of 111%. So it doesn't look much here because this is a monthly chart, but that's a pretty big move. So here we are with the Bollinger Bands being historically tight. They've never been this tight before. So that's suggesting to me, with the fact that we have Bitcoin volatility very low, we have Q4, which is the best performing financial quarter for Bitcoin. All of this suggests to me that there is going to be quite a significant push now to the upside. So I'm expecting some good movement to the upside in Q4. As I said in my previous video, I think the likelihood is that Bitcoin will probably find its ultimate cycle high sometime in Q4. There is a possibility it could push into Q1. I think that's unlikely, but I'm open to it because I'm not going to, sit here and say Bitcoin is going to top out at this exact date, at this exact price, because that's just foolish to do so. So I'm just going to keep an eye on the chart. But certainly, I think taking some profit in Q4 would be a very good idea. It very much depends how Bitcoin moves in Q4. For example, if it really, really pushes hard above 150K, to 160, 170, 180, I really think that would be the end of the cycle, really. I can't really see it going above 200K, to be quite frank. But, keep an eye on it. That's all we can do. If we're grinding through Q4 and we don't really appreciate that much, we get to say 136 or something like that. Maybe there's an argument that we could push into Q1, but it very much depends on the macro at that point. So we're just going to have to keep an eye on it. But right now, I think the most important thing to do is look at the present, what's going on right now, what's going to happen in the next few weeks, months. Bitcoin volatility is low. Bitcoin is now pushing to the upside. Bollinger Bands are super tight. History tells us when they're this tight, there are usually significant moves to the upside. So my bet is that we are now going to start pushing through Q4 to highs with Bitcoin and some of the altcoins. Now, on the altcoins, just, last video, went over this video before that, went over it, many videos before. If you follow my channel, then you will know this chart very well. It's Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance is essentially really important to how altcoins perform, because when Bitcoin dominance is pushing higher and higher, the altcoin market doesn't really like that. It might appreciate some in US dollar, but on the Bitcoin pairs, it doesn't like it, and it goes down. But with Bitcoin dominance now sitting at 58, my view is we could have a little bit more of a push up, maybe to 60% or something, particularly if Bitcoin starts pushing away from everything, and there's some strong narrative behind Bitcoin. It's quite possible that Bitcoin might start sucking the air out of the room. But then ultimately, my view is that Bitcoin dominance will actually start to decline quite rapidly and quite quickly. Remember what I said in the last video? A lot of people saying, oh, there's not enough time for an alt season. That's just absolute nonsense. If you actually look at the major moves in the altcoin markets historically, they really came in 3 or 4 month periods. Here, 3 or 4 month period, that's where altcoins really, really rallied in 2021, from sort of February through to sort of late April, mid-May. That was arguably the euphoric top for 90% of the altcoins. Some of them went on to make other highs at the 4-year cycle top, but 90% of them didn't, and that was really the parabolic move. Again, same in November. There was basically sort of 3 months of movement, and massive movement in the altcoin market. Obviously, there was a big move previous to that, but completely different time, completely different space it was then. There were only a few thousand altcoins at that point. Now there are millions of them. But my point is that these things happen very quickly. In this red box, you can see how quickly that happened. That's how it quickly accelerated back in 2017 through to January 18. Same again in 21. I'm expecting this to happen again in 2025, possibly going into 2026. But this will rapidly decline, in my view, which will cause the altcoin market to push really hard. And I think that's likely to start happening maybe in sort of November, December time. But Bitcoin hopefully will now start moving pretty solidly through October. This is another good chart you should keep an eye on. This is Ethereum versus Bitcoin. So it's the ETH BTC chart. Every cycle, as we know, everyone calls Ethereum dead, and every cycle everyone's wrong every time. But my view is that Ethereum BTC is likely, given the tailwinds now and the Wall Street put it's getting, or the bid it's getting from Wall Street, likely it's going to kind of maybe get up into, best case scenario, I think, is it gets up to the top of this range and about the 0.082. Maybe it pushes a little bit higher. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, I think, is it probably maybe might come up to about 0.5, 0.6 kind of area, this sort of area. So I'd say this kind of area here, let's put it in there. It's probably easier if we do it like this, because I think this kind of area would be the worst case scenario. So anything between 5.3 to about 6. Best case scenario is it pushes up to the 8, 0.08, maybe a little bit higher. But those are the areas. Ethereum is not dead. There is a massive run left with Ethereum. US dollar wise, I think 8 to 10K is a reasonable target for Ethereum. Could go a bit higher. But point being, keep an eye on this chart, because if Bitcoin looks a bit toppy and Ethereum BTC is up in here, or it's up here, that would be an absolute warning sign that cycle's coming to an end, really. So last thing before we stop this video, or we finish on this video, is I want to show you something which is quite interesting in relation to the 200-week moving average. Get rid of that. There you go. And we'll I'll get rid of all of these so you can see it a little bit easier. So the 200-week moving average is quite an interesting moving average, really, in Bitcoin's history, because, and I'll show you why, essentially, the 200-week moving average has been quite a good indicator at showing when there might be a Bitcoin top. And I'll show you why. I tweeted about this the other day. I've tweeted about it, for many years, but I shall show you what we mean by this. So the 200-week moving average, which you can see here in green, has actually predicted quite a lot of the time the Bitcoin tops. And I'll show you why. 200-week moving average tracking the price underneath here. Now, when the 200-week moving average crosses the previous all-time high, so this was the previous all-time high in 2013, this was the high made in 2017. When it crosses this area here, you can see the cross of the all-time high. When it crosses that area, that usually signals a Bitcoin top. It's been fairly accurate, to be honest. So we've got this top here. So you can see the 200-week moving average crossed the price of $1,161, and that was ultimately the top for Bitcoin. Again, it was very, very close in the previous cycle. So here it started getting extremely close here. There was a little bit left for it to go, but it was tight, and it was getting very, very close. So that sort of was signifying that there could be a Bitcoin top. I mean, it wasn't really of any significance last cycle because it only happened once before. But if we're looking at, say, a top in end of December, there is quite a bit of room for this to move up. And a lot of people will look at this and go, well, look at the slope of it. That's going to take ages to get to there. I mean, it might not even get there at this slope. But the thing is, guys, is this. If Bitcoin starts moving super, super quickly in a volatile manner to the upside, this is what happens. Okay, you might have a nice normal slope here, but then suddenly if there's a sudden significant move to the upside, for example here, you can see how it slopes normally here, and then suddenly it really pushes up. So it's quite possible if Bitcoin starts sort of doing this slope is going to get steep. Okay, and my view is that we can't just look at this one indicator. There are lots and lots of indicators that we look at in my group as to a judge as to whether things are getting a bit overheated and it's time to take profit. But the point is this: once it starts getting close, then that's a really good indication that previously, historically, Bitcoin has usually found its cycle top pretty close to around when the 200-week moving average reaches the previous all-time high. So when the 200-week moving average gets to at the moment, let's have a look. Where is it at the moment? At the moment, it is 54K or so. So once it gets to, say, 60K, I think that would be, some form of signal. And then you can look at other things as well, in relation to indicators and macro backdrop, etc. But yeah, so just something to keep an eye on. Not something we're going to look at individually on its own, but something that we would in our group take into account, looking at all the other indicators as well. I think we've got to be a bit careful with Bitcoin top indicators this cycle as well, because most of them at the moment are saying that we're nowhere near a top. But the problem is it's slightly different this cycle. The volatility for Bitcoin's been significantly dampened by institutions, etc. So we'll keep an eye on them, but I still think that the top's going to come Q4 or a push at Q1, but we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, in our group, we took positions from 20K down to 15K. So, once we get to 150K, we're 10x on Bitcoin. 10x on Bitcoin, that is an extremely good trade. And you would be a fool if you weren't taking profit at that point. Anyway, that's it for today. If you want to join the group, the link's in the description. It's only $499 a year. That's literally less than a price of a cup of coffee every day. We can really help you manage your risk, really help you look at the markets in a proper sort of way. We've got lots of professionals who've worked in traditional finance and crypto for many, many years. And we can help you out a lot with your investments, with your risk management. We're open 24/7, so questions get answered usually within minutes, if not within hours. But $499, links in the description. That's the end of the video. Like and subscribe. Thank you very much for your support, and I shall speak to you all soon. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.